How are you, Peter?
I'm doing very well, Rich. Thanks.
I'm glad that you're here to help us set the stage for the second half of the season. What do you believe is the story of the first half of the Major League Baseball season, Peter?
I think probably the biggest thing in my mind, it's a kind of a combination of the restoration of what we thought the Washington Nationals were. I mean, you remember last year, they were supposed to be what the Cubs have been this year. And almost everything else. I mean, they had like 7 regulars hurt at one point. The pitching staff got hurt, et cetera. And it was a disappointing year. But I think they're poised now to win the East pretty big. And a lot of things have happened with Espinosa and guys like that. And they have Strasburg and Scherzer. They're at the top of the rotation. I really think that could be a great story. I think that the National League Central race, because it's not over, but for the Cubs to do what they've done, and they staggered the last 3 weeks, but they had a ton of injuries. But the fact the Cardinals are always on the rise again, and I thought we really saw something there at the end as they started to their pitching got a lot better, and the Pirates I find fascinating because they get Cole back to pitch the second game. They get Tyon back to pitch the fourth game. They get their catcher back. McCutcheon has started to hit. After this 3-game series with Washington, they essentially play way sub-500 teams for the next 20 games. They can get within 3 games in this run. And I think they're very creative. And sometimes it seems as if they play above their projected talent line, but I think the talent's just a lot better and they're so much deeper than people realize. If they get that pitching and Cole and Tyon pitch as we think they can, they're going to be very interesting. I think the first half ended and lead into the second half in a pretty interesting way.
So who's the team to beat in the American League, do you think?
I think it's really hard to say who out of the East or West, because we don't know how Texas and Boston fix their pitching. They have the best teams in terms of position players, but there are a lot of issues. I mean, it's going to be really important when Darvish pitches this weekend. Terribly important. I think it's Saturday he starts, and that's really important. Just as with Boston, when Rodriguez pitches on my network tomorrow night, he is a huge guy for the Red Sox because they expected him to be their number 2 starter, and he got hurt his knee in spring training and was inconsistent, was sent out. Now they claim he's found his delivery. That's important. I think, though, if I were to say, who do I think is the team to beat, it's Cleveland. As long as this 9-day road trip caused by the Republican convention doesn't get them off to sort of a miserable start in the second half. I mean, I think and also, hopefully there won't be riots and so forth and damage done to their bar. I kidded with one of their front office guys that the good news is I think you're going to be in the World Series. The bad news is you're going to probably have to play it at Comerica Park.
Well, let's hope not, right?
I mean, I hope it doesn't happen. I mean, but there are some very bad signs that we see there. Just hopefully a city which I believe 50% of the inhabitants of the city are below the poverty line will hold back this week.
Peter Gammons joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then there's the Red Sox sitting right there along with the Blue Jays for that wild card position. And you've got the Mets, Marlins, and Dodgers. Which one of those teams do you think that is either a wild card right now or on the periphery that can make this run in the second half and make some hay?
When Brandon McCarthy came back and just sort of the way they've used Urias and the hope that Ryu comes back and the Dodgers' depth to be able to go out and make a trade, I think the Dodgers are real sleepers in this thing. I thought for a while they were not going to do it. Clayton Kershaw held them together. My great friend Jason Stark, I believe, is right. He is the MVP in the National League in the first half, just because the Dodgers are 2 different teams with Clayton and without him. But I think that pitching depth has started to come back a little bit, and they can make a run at the wild card. It'll be an interesting race for that wild card. You have Dodgers, Cardinals, Pirates, Mets, Marlins, all in pretty interesting position. And, some of the things, and I love Toronto. I still think Toronto might be the favorite in the East. But there are these problems with how many innings can some of these guys pitch. I mean, Sanchez has been one of the elite starters in the American League, but how much more can he start before they have to put him in the bullpen? That's a big loss for them. How much can Jose Fernandez? How many innings? He can't throw 200 innings. So if it's going to be, is it going to be 175? Is it going to be 180? I think that's a very important thing to watch. How much can Darvish pitch? And then you go over to the trademark, the same thing. Wondering, Rich Hill and Pomeranz are two of the most sought after pitchers, but how many innings can they throw? Rich Hill hasn't thrown 100 innings in a decade, actually, since I think 2008. So it messes up the trade market as well, just figuring how long can these guys pitch. And we've seen it with Jake Arrieta, as great a pitcher as he is. He had never thrown more than 156 innings. He threw 248 last year, was worn down by the last two playoff games he pitched. And I think we've seen him get into a slump with his command, and I'm sure it's exhaustion related.
Peter Gammons joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. A lot made of the All-Star game. Let's get into this a little bit. First thing about Ortiz being taken out too soon was the mention, and a lot of folks are wondering if he's really going to retire because he had such a great first half of the season. And you and I talked about this the last time you were on, and it seems to me one of the more underreported stories going on about exactly what Ortiz is going through to be as excellent as he has been. And when he was taken out of the All-Star game, I thought to myself, good, because he's got a whole second half of the season. He can't fall apart. It seems that not a lot of folks are talking about what he's gone through to just get to the level of consistency and greatness that he's got in the first half of the season, Peter.
There are days, Rich, when it's very clear that his feet are just killing him. And, at times he runs okay. There are times when he can't. He's maintained his balance at the plate amazingly. That, I say amazing. The fact he's on a pace to hit 65 doubles is just incredible. But that's another story. But I think he needs every bit. I thought Ned Yost was looking at David Ortiz and saying, you know what, it's a great show if he's the last man standing. But on the other hand, for the good of David Ortiz and baseball in general come September and possibly October, let's give him a little bit of rest. I'm sure that he talked to the Red Sox people about it. And I thought the people who criticized Ned, I think that they sort of underestimated the humanitarian side of it. And that's what really struck me as well. I thought it was probably a good thing for him. He was not unhappy to be out of that game. He's going to get enough adoration between now and September 30th. So we don't have to worry about that.
Well, and in terms of putting home field advantage of the World Series on the line, Peter, when is this going to end? Because it's not translating to more interest in the game. I mean, America's Got Talent outdrew the All-Star game this week. And when there are so many teams that are trying to beat each other's brains in to get the best record in the league and make the playoffs, why should home field advantage come down to a very entertaining, I might add, but one at-bat between Will Harris and Aledmus Diaz? Why should that be the case in Major League Baseball, Peter?
I agree with you entirely. I get it. I get. They were trying to find reasons to get people to watch, and Fox is great to MLB, no question about it. But they can move on. And I wrote this. When they say this game matters, fact is that the games that Madison Bumgarner pitched over the weekend and that two or three other pitchers pitched that kept Danny Salazar. I mean, the games that are important, the ones that matter, are the ones that they've pitched for to try to get to the World Series. So when Bumgarner and Salazar, for instance, pitched, is far more important than pitching in the All-Star game. And that line of pretension, I think, people see right through it. It's transparent, and it's just fine. Just say, look, this is really fun. We have all these great players coming together. We'll have a good time with it. But to say that it's really important, the home field advantage is nice, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the most important. I think the league that gets home field advantage should be the league that wins in interleague play, the league with the best record.
Huh. Or you just go with the best record, just like every other sport. The best record gets a higher seed or home field advantage. It's just, that's it. Every game counts. You know,
I'll say this. I think that they've done a great job in MLB. The way they set it up with the two wild card teams with a play-in game, what that's done is make it really important to finish first, so that the first place team gets rewarded, and the wild card team, whoever is the wild card team, does not have home field advantage. I think that's important. I really think that's important. It makes them have to play it out right down to the end, and then you get the home field advantage in whatever playoff series you're in by having the best record. But the idea of having it decided by the All-Star game, I mean, the regular players aren't playing. I mean, there was a moment there, one or two moments near the end of the game when it was pretty exciting. But at the same time, I agree with you. I mean, I love Will Harris, but I agree with you. A Harris-Diaz moment should not decide who gets the home field advantage.
Last one for you, Peter. In the couple minutes I have left, in our next segment, we're going to talk about what's on TV, on sports TV tonight, with it being somewhat of a dark night in terms of live sports. There's a 30 for 30 on Doc and Daryl this evening on our former place of business on ESPN. What are your memories of those two guys?
Well, I've seen that, and it really is good. I mean, the Mark Fidrich piece on MLB and the Darryl and Doc are really good. And I remember them both very fondly. I understand, and I think that one thing that this piece does is really point out, there are certain things that come out of your background and how you grow up that sometimes very hard to overcome. And I get it, and I think it's very well portrayed. I always found them each to be very kind, very insecure people who genuinely wanted to be what they never could become. And in that way, it's a tragedy. I think they both, once they got over the initial denials, I think they always understood. And what I always found amazing was that Doc's nephew, Gary Sheffield, completely got it. I mean, he would never say anything negative about his uncle. But Sheff has lived an exemplary life off the field. And it's because of that. He learned from it. He saw it close up, and it changed his life. But it's too bad that two of the greatest talents in the game, especially in the 80s, fell short the way they did.
Peter, thanks.
And it also shows the power and how many great athletes probably fell by the wayside in our lifetime.
Peter, thanks for the time. I'd love to have you back on around the trade deadline.
We'd love to be there, Rich. Thanks a lot.
You bet. That's Peter Gammons, who I could listen to all day.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.